here to sort of celebrate my past. Well, my past is pretty shady. And I tell you the truth, I'm much more interested in my future.
If you called Ruth and said, I have this marvelous idea for a ballet, she would say, well, darling, let's do it, you know. We had quite a career with Miss Page, didn't we?
Yeah.
Oh, she was such fun to work with.
Very demanding.
Oh, yes, but she'd come out with great things, you know, and it was one of the first choreographers that I worked with personally, you know, learning their choreography right from them.
Right.
And the things that she would say to get you into the right mood were just marvelous.
We've lived so long, you know, that we're going to have to retire again all the way, the cycle all over again.
I'm going to retire right into the grave.
I want to retire up in the grave.
Ruth was like a little hurricane that moves through.
And I particularly remember you in purple tights, and you had a yellow sort of pullover with a skirt slid all the way up to there.
Well, you know, I've always liked costumes. I don't like dancing just in tights. And maybe when I stop dancing, I like to dress up because I can't wear costumes anymore.
Because, of course, she figures so prominently in the lives of so many dancers.
Well, the best story, I have to tell you the best story about Saint-Tropez. You know, there's a nudist beach there. And I was walking along feeling very overdressed in a tiny little bikini, but I was walking along and I thought, oh, these people look perfectly terrible nude. And I looked a little further and there was a bunch of boys and they looked divine. So naturally, I walked right up to the beautiful boys and they started saying, hello, hello. I thought, who are they? And it was the whole Royal Ballet, stark naked.
We worked, but we also laughed a great deal.
One thing about Ruth, she was always there. She traveled with us no matter what the trips were. Sometimes they were very long. She always there. Great moral support.
Things happen when you work with Ruth because maybe it's because she makes them happen.
That's my brother. You're 1,000 times more famous than I am.
It's difficult, I think, to give people an idea of what Indianapolis was like at the turn of the century. It was a very quiet community. It, at that time, thought of itself as the major cultural center of the Middle West. My father was a physician. He was a very dignified person and a very authoritarian person in many ways. Mother was a very frenetic person, much like Ruth herself. She dominated our family in the sense that she provided the motivation and Father provided the dignity and the stability. And the result is, I think this gave both Ruth and myself the ability to live as we saw fit.
Lots of people think that I'm spoiled. And I think so, too. My father, my brothers, and even my husband, Tom, were all culprits. But it really started with my mother. She taught me to play the piano, she took me to concerts and museums, but she didn't teach me to cook or to sew because she said that if she did teach those things to me, then I would have to do them, and she really wanted me to be an artist. My parents always gave parties for their literary friends, and I supplied the entertainment. My mother would play the piano, and I would make up dances for an audience that included Booth Tarkington, Otis Skinner, James Whitcomb Riley, and all kinds of people. I loved making up those dances to please people, and I guess I still do. When I was about 8 years old in Indianapolis, I started taking fancy dancing lessons from Miss Anna Stanton. I'm not quite sure what fancy dancing meant, but I think it's the opposite. Everybody was studying ballroom dancing, so this was something really fancy. We learned skirt dances and all kinds of silly nonsense. And I had a little friend, Eleanor Shaler, who studied with me. And we were full of all kinds of projects. And we were decidedly, at 8 years old, the star dancers of Indianapolis. So Vice President Fairbanks was having a garden party, and he invited us to dance at the party, which of course thrilled us. And we decided to dance a dance called Twilight, which we called Crepuscule, as we thought it sounded much grander. And we wore a little piece of each of us of gray chiffon, and we had bare feet. Well, we danced the dance. Everybody seemed to like it. But the next day, in the newspapers, there were these huge pictures of us little girls on the front page saying how we had shocked everybody. Well, in those days, nobody liked to get publicity. You know, it was considered very mauvais goût to have publicity. So my mother and father were furious. Everybody was furious. And that's the reason why I don't like publicity, even to this day. Anna Pavlova sparked my entire generation of dancers from Sir Frederick Ashton down. My mother saw Pavlova and Mordkin in Indianapolis. I was too young to go, but she was thrilled with them, and she said that she would take me to see them if they came the next year. The local manager in Indianapolis, Ona B. Talbot, who was a great friend of my mother's, took me backstage after the performance. She had just danced the Dying Swan in her fragile, beautiful arms, and she was so pale, and oh, she looked so poetic. And when I opened the door and went into her dressing room, here she was, stark naked, picking her teeth. Well, of course, she looked beautiful naked, but it was sort of a surprise for a little girl. Then she took a hold of me, and she said, I had my hair in a pompadour. All the children wore their hair in pompadours and bows. She took the bow off, and she parted my hair in the middle, and she said, "This is for dancer." So, of course, all through my dancing days, I wore my hair parted in the middle. Well, the next day, I wanted to dance for them. See, I was the star in Indianapolis, and I thought I was awfully good. Anyway, after that audition, so to speak, Pavlova invited me to come to Chicago to study. And by that time, she thought I was ready to join the company. I remember once I was a slave, one of her slaves in Faust. And I got to cross the stage with her all alone. I can remember to this day what we did. Da-dum, da-dee-dee, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, just the touch of her hand, of course, just sent, everybody was so excited about her, no matter what she did. It's hard to describe to you people who've never seen her what she was really like, what charisma she had. It was a long, long tour that year, and we ended up in Lima, which was the big city on the western coast. We Pavlovitas were very, very popular in Lima, and when we got on the boat to leave, there were all kinds of presents. And among my presents was a box of candy. After we'd been out about 3 days, I opened it, and there were these lovely chocolates, and inside the chocolates was a diamond necklace with sapphires. Well, nobody'd ever given me a diamond necklace before, nor since, I may add. And I thought, I didn't know who gave it to me. I had no idea whatsoever. But my mother said, "You send that back." I said, "Oh, Mother, I'll never get another diamond necklace. Let me keep it." "No," says she, "you send it back." So that was the end of that. Then we ended up our tour in Cuba, and that was where I left the company. The war was over, and my father was coming home, and my mother said I had to go back to school. I was in New York in school then, and she said I didn't have any education, which was certainly true. So I said goodbye, and Pavlova gave me this wonderful, wonderful shawl, which I've treasured all my life. But Pavlova's last and most enduring gift to me was to give me as a gift to Adolf Bohm. I first saw him dance with the Diaghilev Company in Indianapolis when I was just a girl. As I understand it, he was the big rival to Nijinsky. You liked the effeminate Nijinsky, or you liked the masculine character dancer Bohm. I liked Bohm. So it was a great thrill for me to be able to study with him when I came to New York. I was treated just like one of the family. I used to babysit for Bohm's son, and people like Varese, Salcedo, and Prokofiev would come and visit, and they would play their music. So if sitting at the piano with Prokofiev was babysitting, why, I was all for it. Bohm was an extraordinary boost to my career. He made me the première danseuse of his ballet team, and he worked out all the dances on me, and then I got to teach them to the various guest artists that he had. I starred with him in Bruguière's film of Danse Macabre, which was one of the first dance films. And he gave me my first real starring role in John Alden Carpenter's Birth of the Infanta in 1919. I was the Infanta, and Baum played the part of the dwarf. The Chicago Tribune said that Ruth Page was perfect, and I thought, oh, how easy this all is. You can be perfect right away. And as I always say, I've been going downhill ever since.
When did he write it?
I don't know. It was 1920 thing when I was in the show.
Wow.
A couple of years ago. Well, I thought it was very much beneath my dignity to be dancing in a show. But in 1923, I needed a job and was offered the dancing lead in Irving Berlin's second Music Box Revue. So I took it and stayed with the show for 2 years. I almost lost my big solo because it seemed too classical. But in an all-star actors benefit, my dance was such a hit that Berlin immediately put it back into the show. Just as Victor Herbert had offered several years before, Irving said that if I'd learned to sing, he would make me a star. But I didn't have the slightest interest in Broadway nor in Hollywood, which maybe was stupid of me, as I could have done it. But I wasn't interested at all, not at all. Every young girl has lots of beaux, I suppose, and I had my share. And all the men I went around with, and there were quite a few, none of them wanted to have an affair with me. They only wanted to marry me. The one I really think I liked the best was Sviatoslav Rurich. And I think I liked him mostly because Sviatoslav means light of the world. And having a very simple name myself, I like fancy names. And he was the son of Nicholas Rurich, the famous painter. Nicholas Rurich designed Sacre du Printemps for Diaghilev. And he had a museum devoted entirely to his work in New York, and he was a mystic. And they didn't approve of me at all. I don't know why, but they didn't approve of me for Sviatoslav at all. So they took Sviatoslav off to Tibet for a year, and when he came back, he came up to see me, and so everything was all settled between us. And in the meantime, I'd gotten engaged to Tom Fisher, and when he heard the name Fisher, he said, "You're going to marry a man named Fisher when you could have married the light of the world?" Monte Carlo, oh, it brings back so many memories to me. First of all, I came here on my honeymoon. I met Tom Fisher through John Crane. They were classmates in Harvard. He was a young lawyer, and he was full of imagination, and he was just my dish of tea. So there was no doubts in my mind. I just married him. We didn't have any money, but we put together all our pennies and came to Monte Carlo. We stayed in a little cheap hotel, and the Diaghilev company was here, and Cicchetti, who was the ballet master of the company and did all the teaching, Diaghilev really believed in Cicchetti, and I had studied with him in London. So when I was in Monte Carlo, he formed a class every morning at 9 o'clock. But Cicchetti invited Diaghilev to come see me in the class. So he came one day, and I was trembling, of course, and shaking and thinking, here's this great man, and what am I? And anyway, after the class was over, he invited me to join the company. And I was so sort of taken aback by being invited, having this great man take any interest in me at all, that I said yes, forgetting all about my honeymoon. Well, my husband took it very, very well. He went back home from his honeymoon all alone, and everybody said, oh, she's terrible, that marriage is finished. However, after 44 years, we were still very happily married, and I must say, I never had a dull moment ever in my life with Tom Fisher. Well, after I'd been here for a while, I realized that my career either had to be in Europe with Diaghilev and forget all about my husband in the United States and everything there. And so I got a cable from the Colón Theater in Buenos Aires asking me if I would dance the Coq d'Or. I always said that I would go to the ends of the earth to dance the Queen of Shamakah in Coq d'Or. That's the only role other than my own choreography that I ever wanted to dance. So, being a girl who always keeps her word, I took the offer. Diaghilev was furious. I don't think he ever took another American in his company after that. So I went back home to Chicago for one day, unpacked, kissed my husband hello, packed, kissed my husband goodbye, and off I was to Buenos Aires. In the meantime, John Alden Carpenter had founded the Chicago Allied Arts, which was dedicated to producing only the most modern works in music, art, and dance. And he wanted everything in the last word to come to Chicago. And this was much more interesting for me than anything that was going on in New York at that time.
I was also in the Allied Arts. I'm that little girl in their production of Foyer de la Danse. This is Celeste Holm, and I remember all the wonderful roles Ruth danced, especially the Rivals. This portrait of Ruth in the Rivals was done by my mother, Jean Park. Ruth wasn't satisfied with appearing in other artists' works only. She was fortunate in being encouraged by the Allied Arts to create her own. The first was a jazzy duet based on John Held cartoons. It was called The Flapper and the Quarterback, and it was the first time that a jazz dance was seen in a highbrow concert. Audiences were shocked by it, and they loved it. It was the beginning of Ruth's pioneering period in dance Americana, long before Agnes de Mille's Rodeo and Eugene Loring's Billy the Kid. Well-known Russian designer Nicholas Remisov had come to the Allied Arts as art director, and he used his special caricature style to design most of Ruth's ballets. There was Oak Street Beach, Gold Standard, Hear Ye, the tongue-in-cheek courtroom drama, for which she commissioned the score from Aaron Copland.
If you can imagine, I paid Aaron Copland $150. In those days, I had a hard time raising $150, and Copland was tickled to death to get it.
There was American Pattern, music by Jerome Moross.
This was an interesting story, I think. It was based on a woman's dilemma of choosing between domesticity and freedom. It was pretty modern for those days, I must say. I've always been a liberated woman, I guess. And at that time, I was sinking into a pattern. But then it became more abstract, and it really wasn't I anymore, but any American woman.
Frankie and Johnny crowned this prolific period. Produced by the Chicago WPA in 1938, co-choreographed by Ruth and Bentley Stone, it was hailed as one of the best products of FDR's administration and was a sellout in Depression Chicago.
But the combination of its bawdy subject matter, beer-drinking Salvation Army women, a tap-dancing funeral procession, and two lesbians shocked New York in the mid-40s. I remember the rehearsal pianist thought the music so vulgar that she refused to play it. But the ballet master loved the music, and he played it for every rehearsal. It was none other than George Balanchine. Then John Martin of the New York Times hailed it the best ballet of 1945 and brought it respectability and audience acclaim.
The Bells and Billy Sunday followed, thrilling and outraging many a ballet russe audience. But the biggest scandal of all came in 1950, when Les Ballets Américains, headed by Ruth and Bentley Stone, brought these ballets to Paris.
It was about the early 50s, and we were dancing at the Champs-Élysées. Ruth had asked the quartet from the Jose Limon Company to go and do two of our works, the Moors Pavane and La Malinche. And then we were in one of Ruth's works. I remember I was Batsheva in her Billy Sunday, and I danced behind a screen. I was silhouettes. I was very happy. And it was La Scandale of Paris, because she did a piece called Frankie and Johnny. Well, nobody knew that. This was real Americana, and Paris doesn't know a thing about Americana. And down came Ruth down the steps being Frankie, very sexy. But you see, we weren't sexy with spangles on our eyelids and the she costumes. And at the end of the performance, there was dead silence, and then a response that we'll never forget in our lives, because it was called La Scandale. People shouted, and people booed, people yelled, and people screamed, and we could not believe what was happening. But we stayed in Paris at the Champs-Élysées for 1 month, in spite of everything. And the people from Théâtre Française came and loved us. And after that, when one thought Ruth could never come back again and show her face, I understand she came back and conquered Paris, but really conquered it and still does to this day.
I think it was Buckminster Fuller who gave this statue of me the name Miss Expanding Universe. I really don't think it looks very much like me, but anyway, it's a beautiful statue, and I love the reflection of the lake in it. I like to look at it here. This was a strange period in my life. My mother called it the sack, string, and mask period, and she didn't like it at all because she said, why should I hide my pretty face? Well, anyway.
In the early 30s, Ruth brought a new look in choreography to concert stages throughout America. She abstracted and impersonalized the body into new plastic forms in sacks designed by Noguchi, with strings and sticks by Chelychev, and with masks by Remisov. At the time, critics hailed her solo dance recitals as among the most important events of the cultural season.
But of course, now we've all passed through this period, and it's now a question of being interesting as a relic of the past.
Always seeking the new and different, Ruth joined the incomparable Austrian expressionist dancer Harold Kreutzberg in the mid-30s for joint concerts throughout America and Japan. When they performed together, the electricity each had separately was transformed into poetry.
It seems strange, maybe, sitting in this comfortable place, that my favorite time in Chicago, the most creative time, the time when I enjoyed working most, was during the Depression under the WPA. The director of the WPA, Harry Mindern, said perfectly frankly, Ruth, I don't know anything about dancing. Do whatever you want. And of course, that was great. I love that. And we had plenty of time to do everything. We could have they gave us lovely studios, and we could have a 3-hour class if we wanted to, and work on the niceties of technique, and then we could rehearse all afternoon. We could take time, we could try this, try that. We had a group of modern dancers and a group of ballet dancers.
So Bentley and I utilized this wealth of time and talent to create Guns and Castanets, Carmen set in Civil War Spain. All dances had to have social content in those days, it seemed. So Jose was a loyalist soldier, Escamillo a fascist aviator, and Carmen was a girl who knew a lot about love, but nothing about politics. I've done 3 versions of Carmen since, and I love my most recent one for the Dance Theater of Harlem with designs by Andre Delfaux. But Guns and Castanets was very interesting with poems by Garcia Lorca, and once again, Jerry Moroz did a marvelous job with the score.
Ruth was a very exciting person at the time. She had a ballet company connected with the Opera House, and she was commissioning ballets. While a lot of other people were hiring composers to write music for the dance, it was always on a small scale. But here Ruth was offering American composers large-scale productions, and she was almost the only person in the country who was doing that then.
Since 1934, Ruth and Bentley Stone had developed a very special creative partnership. In 1941, they moved on from concert stages to competing with steak dinners at New York's posh Rainbow Room. Shortly after, World War II claimed Bentley's services, and Ruth, partnerless, needed a new idea.
Oh, I don't know. I've always had lots of ideas. I don't know where do ideas come from? How can you say? They just come and sit on your shoulder and say, I want to be done. Lehman Engel was stationed at Fort Sheridan. I guess it was about 1942. He was up there all summer, and he was a gob. He used to come down here dressed in his sailor suit, and at that time, he had a cute little fat tummy, and he was absolutely beguiling. And he likes poems, and so do I, and all the boys were off in the war, so I had to dance alone. And I thought it would be nice to dance and speak poems at the same time, sort of a crazy idea maybe, but it worked very well. And we did all kinds of poems, like the Cambridge ladies who live in furnished souls are unbeautiful and have comfortable minds, or Rebecca who slammed doors for fun and perished miserably by H. Belloc. Laws of Massey, for heaven's sakes, have you never heard of Lucy Lake?
I loved these works because I was dependent upon no one but myself, and everyone else loved them too. Here at Hubbard Woods, I think most about the past. We had wonderful times here working and playing. It seems everyone passing through Chicago came out to see us. Danilova, Freddie Franklin, B. Lilly, Stravinsky, George Gershwin, who played all night until we brought him breakfast in the morning. Even Maurice Ravel. having requested his menu in advance, came one time to lunch. And after lunch, went to take a nap while Tom and I went to an engagement. And I've never seen him since. For all I know, he's still sleeping in the little coach house down at the end of my garden. But I do miss Tom here the most, I think. We had so much of our limited time together at Hubbard Woods. He would always call me Peter Pan because of a dance I did which became my trademark and because he said I would never grow up. But all things pass, I guess. And when I'm here without him, I don't feel so young anymore.
I know that you would like to have me tell you all my innermost feelings, my profound emotions about all the things that happened to me in my life. But I tell you, I never tell anybody. I tend to keep them to myself. I didn't even have to tell them to my husband because he understood how I felt. It was a very deep understanding between us, and the best thing about our relationship was that I understood all his crazy ideas, and he understood all my crazy ideas, and we took terrific chances on everything. Sometimes we failed, sometimes we were wildly successful, and it made our life always exciting. But to say to people outside, my friends even, I don't go around saying I felt, oh, so profoundly about this. That I don't do that. I'm sorry not to be able to, but I think that so much deep feelings, still you can pass them off with a little joke or a laugh, and it makes life much easier that way. Nobody at my age does a bar, but I like to. It makes me feel very good. Now, this is not a very perfect bar, which I do. In fact, it's very bad bar. My knees won't quite tighten. We always start a bar with 1, 2, and you usually start with pliés.
It was less than 3 weeks before this was filmed. Ruth was lying in a hospital bed in Chicago.
4, no, I can't lift my arm, this should be 5.
She had just been through 6 hours of emergency surgery to remove internal blood clots, resulting from the second of 2 senseless muggings that happened on the sidewalk in front of her Chicago home.
5. Take your hand off the bar, which mine won't go up into 5th position.
In the first mugging, her arm was broken in 3 places.
I can bend forward, but not back.
The second time, Ruth not only had her arm broken again, but was knocked unconscious with a fractured hip.
I can go because I hurt so in there.
The doctors feared that if she lived, she would never walk again. In cases such as this, the recovery begins with a minimum of 8 weeks of bed rest. Well, Ruth would have none of that. As she said at the time, she'd rather be in pain than bored to death in a hospital bed.
This is a kind of a walking exercises to help stretch your Achilles tendon.
You know, I'm 77 years old, and after all those muggings and the operation, I really thought I would have to stop. I can't show steps anymore with my own body, and that is the way I have always worked. But the doctor said that even before I was out of the anesthetic, I was talking about a new production.
Now, this much is all right for me, but I can't bend further than this. You should be able to lay your head right on your leg, and that's a wonderful stretch. It feels good even doing it as badly as I'm doing it. It feels good. 1, 2.
I've still got so many ideas, and there are a lot of exciting young dancers that I would like to work with, so I just can't stop now.
Up.
But I may have to go a little slower.
Oh, I did it. That's the first time I've done it for a long time. Well, of course, really, everybody thinks I'm crazy to do a bar, try to do a bar every day. But in my opinion, everybody should do a bar every day at every age. I think it's wonderful for the legs and the whole body. Of course, I can't do it like I used to. I can't do 32 fouettes anymore. But then I never could.
I started my work in opera ballet in 1926 at Ravinia and adored choreographing the ballets for the opera right up until 1970 when I finished at the Chicago Lyric. I always loved the way opera sounded, but I hated the way it looked. So I decided to make operas into ballets.
And practically any opera you can take and make a ballet out of it, which sounds a little bit sacrilegious maybe to musicians, but it really does work. And it's hard to get good music for ballets, very hard. I commissioned so many scores, and out of all that I commissioned, I only got a few that were really first class. So this idea worked perfectly for me. And the one that I like the best is called Revenge, which is based on Il Trovatore.
I went to Paris and asked the Spanish artist Antoni Clavé, who was all the rage, to design the ballet. And he not only designed 5 of the most beautiful sets you've ever seen, but he painted them himself.
And the ballet was a big smash hit in Paris. We did it with the Champs-Élysées company, and we were supposed to do it just for 3 performances, and we did it every night during the entire season, which was about 5 weeks. And I always say that the success was much more due to Clavé than to me.
The day after the premiere, all Paris knew that Revenge was a great triumph. Proud as I was that my designs were part of that acclaim, it was Ruth's vital choreography, true to the power of the original work, that brought the ballet its great success. Others of Ruth's opera into ballets included Merry Widow, Camille, Die Fledermaus, Salome, Susanna and the Barber, and Mephistopheles. They featured many of the ballet's most brilliant stars: Alicia Markova, Melissa Hayden, Marjorie Torchief, Eric Brun, Henning Kronstam, Kirsten Simon, Sonia Arova, and Rudolf Nureyev. Revenge and The Merry Widow were double-billed on Broadway, and the success of that run began 15 years of tours with Columbia artists. A special audience favorite was Romeo and Juliet, set to Tchaikovsky's Fantasy Overture. Here, then, is the balcony scene.
We hope you're enjoying Ovation. Conclusion of Ruth Page, an American original.
Millions of years ago, we had a French friend in Chicago who had a place in Saint-Tropez, Rennie McCormick. And we told her that if she could find a place by the sea on the South French coast, that we'd like to buy it. And when we first came here, you know, this was a very chic place. It's not anymore, thank God. You went to cocktail parties every night, and you met the same people every day on the beach, and it was all very intime. So this isn't, for me, just a play place. For most people, it is. I did a lot of work here with Antoni Clavet and with George Wakovich and Rolf Gerard and all the various peoples who were doing my ballets. Also, a number of the dancers. And Delfaux comes all the time. And Delfaux doesn't like the sea or go swimming, so he stays up all day long in his little studio upstairs and paints or draws. Then we work on the ballets in the morning and at night. That works out very well. We get everything planned down here where it's a more leisurely pace.
To me, there is an interesting difference between each choreographer. What kind of theatricality they have, besides the dance in itself. The theatricality of Balanchine is very mysterious. I mean, it seems he has no theatricality at all, but he has, of course. But he wants the public to listen to every word he said. So it's the audience who have to go to him. He's not projecting himself into the audience. And Béjart is exactly the contrary. He's not speaking in dance terms, he's speaking in theater terms. So Ruth is neither one thing nor the other. She is theatrical, but it's not an exterior theatricality. It's a projection of her own vitality.
And one, top. No, You see, you fell out of it right away. Now give me your hand so I can show you. Nothing can budge me. Now it's different. This next step, which I'm going to give you, the battement en jambe, is a tombe. You go up here and then you fall. Now see if you can take a breath. The way to do it, and I tell you this is true when you're doing pirouettes, when you're doing holding an arabesque, is have a little breath. And dancers, modern or ballet, they do not know how to breathe. And it's very important, and you've no idea how much it'll help you to hold a position. So try that. It's just a plain old front attitude, going into a paddle and then a turn like that. All right, here we go. And, hold! Better. Turn. Hold! Yeah. I call this a paddle. I suppose that's what it's called. And it should be heavy and into the ground. Now, dancers, ballet dancers, like you all are taught to have everything up and straight, the knees straight, everything is up. This is down, like the music. Remember, this is Carmina Burana. And give me that, like a hiccup. All right, and, yeah. All right, yeah, that's all right. Protest more, Gennady. That's right. Now reach, reach, reach. Struggle, struggle, struggle more. There's nothing you can do. You're pleading. Plead with him. Stretch your fingers, stretch your fingers. Sing, sing. Up front once more. All right. Now go to the next one. Now swing it more. Use your whole body more.
You think you can lure him like you've lured everybody else in your life. Harder. It's a step of protest. Oh, I don't. Dig it into the ground more. Now call to him. Call to him. Look at my beautiful body. Have a heart. Don't touch him, but you try to influence him. You see, struggle up once more. Up, up, down. Death triumphant.
year I had a 40th anniversary. I've written an awful lot of books, and every time I write one and you read something that has been accomplished, you go and you double check, and Ruth Page started it. You were the only American woman to dance with Diaghilev's ballet Russe. You were the only American woman to be invited to dance for the coronation of Japan's Emperor Hirohito. You were the first American to commission dances from George Balanchine. And back home, you staged the first all-black American ballet and also the first jazz ballet. You were also the first American to be a danseuse at the Metropolitan Opera. You were the first to give Agnes de Mille the opportunity to present her work under professional management, and you were the first to commission and produce a ballet by Aaron Copland. And you were the one to present Rudolf Nureyev in his American stage debut. Being first means being original, and Ruthie, you certainly are an American original.
We don't think of Ruth as a choreographer. She does the whole bit. You know, there's some people who just make up steps. Well, she does that too, but that's incidental. Ruth sees, as I've said in the book, she starts out seeing the whole thing finished with costumes, scenery, music. Then she puts it together bit by bit. The choreography is no more part of it than the music and the scenery. And this is why, one of the reasons that I really wanted to write this book, because I don't think anybody who doesn't know Ruth very well knows just how original and how unbeatable she was with this whole business and what she had to contend with. She was always giving more than they could take.
She dazzled them with her first ballet, Flapper and the Quarterback, and 50 years later, in her newest Alice in Wonderland, she is still doing it, as in the surprisingly sensual pas de deux between the passion flower and the tiger lily in Alice's garden.
You know, most dancers think that when they finish their dancing careers, they can start being choreographers. But I disagree with this completely. I think if you're going to be a choreographer, you almost have to start when you come out of your mother's womb. I think you have to have that desire to make up dances, to make up steps, to have ideas for dances. And it's not something that you can learn. You can learn to dance from a teacher, but I don't think any teacher can teach you to choreograph. First of all, you shouldn't be influenced by anybody. You should think for yourself and not take a step from here and a step from there. And I think you should think of all your own steps, your own ideas. I think that the reason maybe that the United States has produced so many really original choreographers is because they've all had to think for themselves. You know, like Jerry Robbins or Martha Graham, Doris Humphreys. There's any number of them that I could name. And I think that it's a profession that you have to be a dancer to be a choreographer. I don't think anybody who hasn't studied dancing and hasn't had a dancing career really can be a choreographer, because you have to show with your own body, you have to show all the steps, you have to make them up on yourself. Nowadays, it's a little bit easier. You can get groups of dancers that are ready to be choreographed on, and that's wonderful when you can do that. In my day, you had to do it all on yourself. I made up hundreds of dances just on myself, and some of them were terrible, and some of them were good, and improvisation has a lot to do with it, too. You can start choreography by improvising, and then pull out the good parts and start giving it a form. I think that's a very good way to choreograph. But each person has their own way of doing it. Some are inspired by music, some are inspired by poems, some are inspired by just dance steps. I was mostly inspired maybe by ideas. I'd get a certain idea of something I wanted to do, or a story, or I was inspired by music also. But I incline to be not very abstract, but I'm more of a storyteller, I think, really. Or a mood, sometimes a mood, like Moonlight Sailing. I did a dance called Moonlight Sailing. That was just a mood. And it was a very funny dance. It was beautiful, I thought. I did it for the children's program in Ravinia. But they all came backstage afterwards, and they said, "What's the matter with you, Ruth Page? You had those sailboats going backwards. Don't you know that sailboats can't go backwards?"
I must confess, ladies and gentlemen, this is an extraordinary opportunity. I've known Ruth for quite a long time. I've never known her really well. Her paths have been toward the arts and mine toward science and medicine. I must say that for many years I've learned to respect her, and in the recent years I've learned to love her.
Thank you.
I must say you are a very curious mixture to me as a clinician of the material, the transcendent, and the economic.
What are you talking about?
This is a mixture you seldom see in a dancer, or seldom see any place. I think it's these qualities, and with a touch of greatness, which makes us salute you, Ruth Page.
I say my swan song, I think, was Alice. I gave my all to Alice in Wonderland, and I felt that maybe I shouldn't try to do anything more. However, I'm doing a few new ones next year. I can't help it. I don't know, it's just something you get into this business, and you can't help going on. I should have retired, I suppose, at the proper age, but I don't see retiring.
want to go back. I'm glad you called. I don't want to go back to you. I don't want to go back. I'll go forward with you, but not back.
Voila.
Let's go.
A holiday of ballet. Dancers from 23 countries come to Moscow to take part in the 4th International Ballet Contest. I think that such an event as the international contest, says Galina Ulanova, makes it possible for us to learn new names and to understand the new trends in modern dancing. I would like to wish all the participants not only success and awards, but also the pure joy of a new awareness of their art.
Canada, Sabina Aleman, Owen Montague.
Номер 5 и 6.
5 and 6.
Второй дуэт.
Martin.
Drawing lots, an exciting moment, the first test.
Serge Lavoie.
Many times there were wished lots of luck, but Lady Luck was with those who were persistent and determined. A second of inspired dancing is worth the many hours of practicing. For the first time, there are two groups, the senior with experienced dancers and the junior consisting mainly of youngsters from schools of choreography. There are 126 entrants. In the jury are such world-famous names as the Soviet ballerina Galina Ulanova, the American ballet master Jeffrey, the French ballerina Yvette Mauviret. The chairman of the jury is the head ballet master of the Bolshoi Theater, Yuri Grigorovich. And the Cuban ballerina Alicia Alonso, and others. The excitement backstage is catching. In just a few seconds, the curtains will part and the competition will be underway. The classical program is the most important part of the contest. The ability to perform in the language of the classical ballet is an indication of the professional level of the contestant. The pas de deux from Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. Alla Artyushkina Haniashvili and Yuri Vasuchenko from the USSR. Precision and strong dancing allowed her to create an excellent image of the confident and evil Odile. Martin Lamy, Canada, variations from Delibes' Coppelia. The contestants also had to perform a modern dance. Yanis Piqueres from Venezuela with his partner Maria Mencia. She is not competing. This is the duet from Prokofiev's ballet Romeo and Juliet, staged by John Cranko. The young dancer proved to be an excellent interpreter. His performance seems to be full of life and excitement. Expressive lines and rhythms of the modern dance as performed by Rosario Suarez from Cuba are a far cry from the harmonious and well-balanced forms of the classical ballet, but they have their own dramatic force and expressiveness. entreaty, a protest, and utter despair live in the dance. Modern choreographers search for ways of portraying the signs, the emotions, the rhythms of modern life in the dance. During the competitions, we saw the most varied dances, from ordinary everyday scenes to difficult philosophical interpretations. Alexander Stepkin, the USSR, with choreographer Dementyev, rehearses The Organ Grinder and the Muse, music by Simakin. The young dancer displayed a spiritual artistry, charm, and sincere dramatism. Choreographer Usmanov and the young dancer Anatoly Kucheruk are rehearsing a dance by Giviksman with his music. The music, says the ballet master, gave me the idea of a lonely youngster in a huge capitalist city. Anna Kushnerova and Konstantin Zaklinsky, the USSR. A fragment from the duet of Esmeralda and Quasimodo from the ballet by Jarre Notre Dame de Paris. The choreography by the prominent French ballet master Roland Petit demands an internally rich but laconic character interpretation. Famous artists of the Soviet ballet pass on their experience to artists from many countries. Olga Lipishynskaya brought her students from Sweden to the competition.
There or here.
The competitions help discover individuality and artistic performers. The very strong and at times severe and courageous dancing of Irek Muhamedov, the USSR, drew everyone's attention. Irek Muhamedov and his partner Galina Krapivina dance apart from Stravinsky's ballet The Rite of Spring, staged by Natalia Kasatkina and Vladimir Vasilyev. The Soviet ballet has produced a new type of dancer, the art of the world-renowned Yermolaeva, Chebukyani, Vasilyev, Lavrovsky, embodying courage and strength. The dancing of the young Muhamedov is a worthy continuation of the wonderful traditions of Soviet ballet. Margareta Pirkun-Bebezici, the USSR, won the hearts of the audience and the jury by her gentle and soul-searching dancing, the depth and complexity of her internal world. Margareta Perkun-Bebezici and Vladimir Kirillov dance a fragment from Khachaturian's Spartacus, staged by Yuri Grigorovich. The meeting of the jury, the endless programs, the difficult and tense atmosphere of the competitions all vividly illustrated just what modern ballet signified. They say that sport is not far from the art of the dance. This may be good, but it is bad when art turns into sport, when the final goal is no more than technical records. Technical ability, physical energy, and movement become art only when they blend together with the natural movements of the dance and its internal feelings. After the tense competitions, the number of participants is reduced to 60.
Holiday of Ballet will continue in a moment. You're watching Ovation on the USA Cable Network. Today's Ovation.
Even empty, the Bolshoi Theater is wonderful. Rehearsing with the orchestra. The conductor is Algis Juraitis. For lovers of the ballet, all the days of the competition were a holiday. I was touched by the wonderful atmosphere of the competition. I feel as though it were a Christmas party, said a member of the jury from the Federal Republic of Germany, the ballerina and teacher Constance Vernon. The competitions were held in 3 stages. In the first, all the contestants danced the classical ballet. In the second, they danced classical and modern numbers, and in the third, again classical. The classical ballet requires severe performance while allowing boundless opportunities for search and individual interpretation. Svetlana Smirnova, the USSR. Variations of Aurora from Tchaikovsky's Sleeping Beauty. The ballerina is severe and restrained, displaying the high professionalism for which the Perm school is distinctive. Canadian Kevin Pugh creates a fantastic storybook image of the bluebird from The Sleeping Beauty. His dance is impressive from the very start, characteristic of Canadian ballet. The Soviet pedagogue Eric Volodin is rehearsing with Yanis Piquedes, Venezuela, the duet from Don Quixote by Minkus. In Romeo and Juliet, his dancing was refined and lyrical. In Basil, he displayed a lightning vitality and mischievous elegance. Amanda McCarrow, the United States. Her Florine from The Sleeping Beauty is very refined with a slightly capricious grace. A fragment from Esmeralda, Natalia Arkhipova, USSR, in the junior group. This very young ballerina was quite on a par with her older colleagues. Fragment from The Sleeping Beauty by Tchaikovsky. Graduates of the Moscow School of Choreography, Nina Ananiashvili and Andris Liepa, won the hearts of the audience. key problems in the development of the ballet discussed during the competitions is the problem of preserving classical traditions. It is necessary to maintain the precise choreographic text, purity of classical forms, and to foster a fine feeling of classical lines. The technical criteria are becoming greater, more complex, and are changing. Only the severity and correctness of classical forms remain untouched. The laws of competition are implacable. Excitement and fatigue, at times a feeling of absolute emptiness after a performance that drains all physical and spiritual strength. Margarita Perkun-Babazicki and Vladimir Kirillov, the USSR, in the fragment from The Corsair. The performance by Margarita Perkun-Babazicki was one of the most interesting events of the competition. A member of the jury from Canada, Betty Oliphant, said, "For me, as a pedagogue, I find that inspiration, poetry, artistry are all very important in the ballet. I cannot help saying that your dancer, Margarita Perkun, in this sense, made a very great impression on me." Muhamedov, variations from Don Quixote. Muhamedov's Basil is nothing like the light and conniving Basil as danced by Piqueras. Muhamedov's Basil portrays a mighty temperament and overwhelming zest. His dancing is like a whirlwind of joy.
Дорогие друзья, мы начнем с младшей группы. По условиям у нас есть один приз.
Under the conditions, we have one prize, the prize of the Ministry of Culture.
Я хочу напомнить, что по очкам, по двум турам у нас высший балл имеет Нина Анаяшвили.
I would remind you that in points after 2 tours, Nina Ananiashvili has the highest score. We think she should be awarded this prize, and we ask your judgment. The jury's final sitting lasted almost through the night. The strict approach of this respected jury is something of a barometer of the culture of the modern dance. The final appraisal, followed by the award, is an assertion of the seriousness of the school, the stability of traditions, and unerring taste. After careful discussions, 8 gold medals were awarded. The grand prize and gold medal are awarded to Irek Mohamedov of the USSR. Artyushkina Haniashvili, USSR, gold medal. Yanis Piquedes, Venezuela, gold medal. Nina Ananiashvili, USSR, Junior Group, Ministry of Culture Prize, and a gold medal. Andres Liepa, USSR, Junior Group, gold medal. Amanda Macaro, United States, Junior Group, gold medal. Nina Arkhipova, Junior Group, USSR, gold medal. Margarita Percun de Vizici, USSR, gold medal. The competition was a holiday not only for the audience, but for all those who took part and those who watched. The wonderful traditions of Moscow ballet competitions continue.
If you enjoy Ovation's monthly ballet presentations, please write and let us know. I'll return in a moment with our address.